Hi, there in Chicago, Mel here, the voice crying out from the wilderness of Malibu to lend that voice for your support and encouragement at your rally today. The Coalition for Canceled Priests. I mean, it's not hard to believe that there is now such a thing, as personally, I know many priests who have been canceled, but not for the reasons you'd think. I mean, it's not like they did a hit and run drive and left the scene of the crime or embezzled church funds, stole the altar wine, or committed some other heinous crime. No, not at all. And who's persecuting them? Well, their own bishops. How's that? Yep. Who are they? Well, they're a pack of men who generally passively sit by and tolerate any kind of nonsense. But if one of their priests utters something that resembles orthodoxy, well, then they spring into action, they reprimand him, and they bully him and do their best to cancel him. And they succeed. They drum him out of the service, off he goes. I'm really sorry about that. That's a grave injustice, and it's kind of white martyrdom. And it's nothing new. It really isn't. It's nothing new. And it's a symptom. It's a symptom of a very deep sickness that afflicts the church. It did not happen overnight. If anyone's familiar with the missives of Archbishop Vigano, he says that the seeds of erosion of the church were sown with the reforms of Vatican II, and I agree with him. He suggests even that we scrap the whole thing and go back and do it the way it was before. And it was a pastoral council, after all. I mean, there was nothing wrong. It didn't need to be fixed. They were doing pretty well. At any rate, and I've had my own run-in with the bishops. I mean, who are they? Well, I remember when I directed The Passion, I went to the USCCB to get support for the film. And those men couldn't get away from me fast enough. And all but a few of them turned their back on me. And it was pretty telling about who they were. A pretty insipid bunch. And it doesn't look like anything's changed. Geez, I remember back in the 70s, old priests, good priests, who were bullied and persecuted by their bishops. There was a rash of it back then also, and it was because they wanted to maintain what it was that they were ordained to do. They didn't want to go along with the new liturgy and the reforms of Vatican II, and so that they were really heavily leaned on. It was never abrogated, the old Mass, never. And it still hasn't been. You can't. It's protected by quo primum. But they were bullied and badgered and put in insane asylums, and it was pretty sad to watch. And this kind of thing is now happening again. So, and how are we supposed to know the good guys from the bad guys? Well, we were given a standard by which to judge them. By their fruits, you'll know them. By their fruits. Anybody seen any good fruit lately? Well, it's tough. And look, I'm a pretty sinful guy. I mean, I'm as venal as the next guy. But I know the difference between a shepherd and a hireling. And I think that the vast majority of these bishops are just a bunch of hirelings, And my question is, who's hiring them? I don't think it's Jesus. Is it Francis? Who's hiring Francis? Is it Pachamama? I mean, I think you need to look at the whole institution. And, I'll quote Archbishop Vigano again in saying that he believes that there was a parallel counterfeit church set up to eclipse the real one. He's suggesting usurpation or an inside job. It seems that way. Anyway, of course, we know the gates of hell will not prevail against it. The victory is God's, not ours. And it will flourish if we keep it in our hearts. It can flourish in our hearts and keep the faith. And that's what's going to happen. That's what I encourage you to do. Again, I'm sorry for your pain, the injustice. I'll definitely throw something in the hat to add my support. And God keep you and God bless you. Thank you.
Well, there you go. So we hope you enjoyed that slightly different introduction to the show. That, of course, was Mel Gibson, the Mel Gibson, famous actor, director, and producer, who, of course, produced that wondrous film, The Passion of the Christ. Hello and welcome to Old Romans Unscripted with me, your host, Archbishop Jerome, and there in Michigan, Detroit, is Brother Stanislaus. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well, Excellency. How are you doing this morning?
Very well, thank you. Yes,
okay.
Evening here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Evening here. Now, as usual, spot question for our viewers. Before we get into discussing what Mel was talking about, what is tomorrow in the liturgical calendar, in the traditional liturgical calendar? And by traditional, I mean the traditional liturgical calendar. What is the feast tomorrow? Otherwise, of course, please, as usual, say hi. Hello to Darren. And greetings to Trevor. And Victoria in Washington State. Mel Gibson is a classic. Yes, absolutely. Good evening to Peggy. And to Shirley. And to Father Thomas, who has answered the question for you. So tomorrow is the Feast of the Holy Name of Mary, and with commemoration of the 16th Sunday after Pentecost. Well done, Peggy, also got it. Most Holy Name of Mary. And speaking of Mary, greetings to you, Mary, up there in Escobana. Hello to Shirley. And of course, again, hello to Anne. Holy Name of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Indeed, that is tomorrow's feast. But before we get on to that, let's just think about what Mel Gibson was referring to. He was that was a filmed address that he gave to a rally in Chicago for that new grassroots organization, Cancel Priests. Who, of course, are supporting people like Father Altman and others. They had a rally in Chicago, I think, last weekend, and Mel sent them that message. Brother Stanislaus, what are your thoughts concerning Mel's message there?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I would have never seen it had you not shown it right now. He's not someone I go to for his opinion. Like most celebrities, I shrug my shoulders. What he said now, however, of course, I don't know. He seemed surprised. He seemed, certainly supportive. Everything he said was okay. I'm glad he, at the end there, sort of said, hey, what did he say? Is he's as sinful as the next guy, or, but. I was wondering what Dr. Marshall was doing a show on, whether he was actually having Mel Gibson on. But I take it like I do any other celebrity coming out and singing anything. I don't care what side they're on. I really don't care. And why? Because this is my personal opinion, that to have money like that, to have celebrity status like that, you had to have sold out somewhere. And you had to have made a compromise with the world. And he can talk all he wants, like these canceled priests can talk all they want. But the reality is that I don't believe that canceled priest or Mel Gibson grasp the actual truth of what is happening. That's my take.
Okay, well, that's interesting. We'll hold that thought. I've got a couple of responses to that, but we'll hold that thought as we bring on Bishop Kelly. Hello, Bishop Kelly.
Oh,
hello there. Good to be back. Good to be back.
nice to see you.
Good to see you. Very good to see you. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah. Can I say at the outset, any of our Irish listeners, watchers, if you want to put in the feed the update of the score of the All-Ireland final, I would greatly appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because I'm missing the second half today.
Oh, well, we're very grateful to you for that. That's a sacrifice indeed. I'm just going to have a sip.
It is.
This is speaking of things Celtic. I'm just going to have a sip of my new beverage. As some of you know, I was in Scotland last week or earlier this week,
yes.
and of course, this is the famous Iron Brew.
Don't
ask me what.
Do you like that?
I don't know. I do.
Nobody knows what's in it. It's a secret recipe. Do you like it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, I sort of grew up. It's like Lucozade, I suppose, but most people don't like it. If they're new to it, they don't like it.
Yes, going back to Mel Gibson. Then, did you happen to see the opening gambit, Bishop Kelly?
I did not. No, I was trying to find my headphones. That's why I'm late.
That's all right. I mean, it's widely available now on the internet. Mel Gibson didn't record it just for us, but he recorded it for the rally that was occurring in your city yesterday for the cancelled priests, and he was sending words of support and giving his Tuppenny Halfpenny on the situation. Now, I said I had a couple of responses to what Brother Stanislaus was saying. Ordinarily speaking, I would concur with you, re celebrity commentators, except that I do know that in the case of Mel Gibson, now this is possibly and probably not pertinent to his early career, but certainly of recent years, and a good number of recent years, he is a traditional Catholic. In fact, he built and paid for a traditional Catholic chapel somewhere in California, I believe. There were rumors that he was a sedevacantist. I'm not sure about that. Perhaps some of our viewers might know. But
I think his father was. His father
was, right.
And that's why he was introduced to traditional Catholicism, I believe.
Right. Gotcha. And I know that read the Passion of the Christ, that film was for him as much an act of devotion as it was a box office hit, which it became, and that he had. Now, is it Gerald Roux or Gerard Roux or something like that? He was a priest actually from London, a traditionalist priest, who said the daily mass, offered daily mass on set of the Passion.
Oh, is it the Saint Ethelreda, that priest?
Yes, that's the one.
Yes.
Father Roux, isn't it? It's French,
Father Roux.
French surname.
I forget the order. Yeah. Is it the Marinists or?
Yeah, he was.
Marinists,
yes, he was. Yeah. And apparently, I mean, Father Roux saying masses was quite something to behold. And
if you had time, apparently it took about 2 hours to say it.
Yeah, he was a little he was a little like Padre Pio in his devotion in saying mass, shall we say. So he would genuflect after the consecration and remain there for quite some time, apparently. So therefore, in terms of what you were saying, brother, I think in Mel Gibson's case, I think he is a slight exception to the rule. I mean, otherwise, I would generally agree with you that most celebrity Catholics are dubious. But I do think in his case that he does understand the situation. I think you're right, and I think Dr. Marshall was right that the various traditionalist Catholics of the Ecclesia Dei communities perhaps are not quite yet grasping the reality of the actual crisis in the church, the real seriousness of the situation. But I think in Mel Gibson's case, I think he is. What I was slightly surprised at was knowing his traditional Catholic credentials, that he was speaking to what is essentially a Novus Ordoite, I would say, outfit, like cancel priests. But we live, as the Chinese say, in interesting times. And speaking of the Chinese in interesting times, there was a development last week where a new bishop, and can you guess of where? Has anybody been keeping up with the time? If you know, mention it in the comments. I'm not going to say no. That's another story.
Because I believe they're in the market for one.
That's. In fact, we might go there. Now. I'll let people work out. So, where was the new bishop in China consecrated? I'll leave that with you just for a second. Let me just say that it's very pertinent to recent events, globally speaking. But anyway, I'll leave that with you. Yes, the Bishop of Ebbsfleet. So Jonathan Goodall.
Just before, a little bit of trivia for your trivia file before we leave Mel Gibson. His most famous movie, I think, is probably Braveheart, which I'm not sure if people know, but was shot in Ireland. It was shot in the Wicklow Mountains, just south of Dublin. But if you recall the movie, there's a whole dialogue in Latin that happens in the movie, and they went to Newbridge College, which at the time was a boarding college for boys, run by the Dominican fathers, and there was a Father Hyacinth there, and they employed him. Hyacinth being a Dominican saint. Jacek in Polish, which sounds a bit more masculine than Hyacinth. So a stretched limousine used to arrive every day at the priory, and Father would get in his habit in the back seat and be brought up to the set, and he would coax them in the pronunciation of the Latin for the scenes. But so they, unlike most modern movies where where you see the chasuble on the Roman chasuble on back to front and the stole over it, and they actually did do a bit of research, and they employed an actual priest to help them. He taught classics at the college to help them with their Latin. So he did his due diligence. Anything else is up to them. But the boys were amazed that this black limousine would come and pick Father up every morning to take him to the film set, which was.
Yeah, it was a great scene in the movie. Well, I mean, there were several scenes. There was the scene of his marriage where Latin was used. There was a requiem scene where Latin was used, and there was a wonderful scene supposedly set outside the city of York, where the French princess had been sent up by Edward Longshanks to supposedly negotiate with William Wallace. And he enters the tent, and they exchange Latin and French. And of course, the princess and her advisor, her chaplain, are surprised that this supposed heathen should be able to speak Latin and French. But of course, he was a knight of the Scottish realm. He wasn't a dunce.
But
anyway.
It was. I mean, talking to which I think is pertinent to our conversation generally, is Latin was the great leveler. If you couldn't, at least there was something you could do. And I would suppose even our Lord had some notion of Latin with the Roman occupation.
Yes, quite possibly. Yeah.
You know, there's a wonderful play written by Brian Friel, the Irish playwright. It's called Translations. And it's set in Donegal, which is the extreme northwest part of the island, and it's about a young British officer, a lieutenant, who's a cartographer, and he's come there to map the territory, and he's taking these Gaelic place names and anglifying. You know, for example, Belfast, the Irish is Belfirstia, so it's just an anglicizing the Gaelic names and mapping out the townlands and all of that. But of course, you know, he meets a young girl, and there's an interest there, and he's, you know, there in his red coat and all of that. But he can't communicate because they're a Gaelic-speaking community, and he's a young English officer, but he does have an Oxford education. And so they end up being able to communicate through Latin, because the local priest has taught in school, because there were head schools then, they weren't formally schools, but he taught them Greek and Latin. So they're able to communicate through Latin, and you know, it comes with this presumption that he's gone into the wild west of Ireland, these savages, you know, that speak Gaelic. But yet, with his Oxbridge education, they find that they can only communicate through Latin, which is quite wonderful. And as you say, it goes all the way back. It's only until recently. It's only, I would say, until the 20th century that dissipated. Because you know, you would find. I mean, my parents' generation, if you wanted to study law or medicine, you needed A-level Latin to get into university, and it's. I mean, you didn't need it when I got there, but you know, the essence of that is that if you use a so-called dead language, is that a living language is that words change, their meanings change. Right? You know, you take the most obvious one is 1950s gay meant, you know, happy and carefree. It doesn't mean that now. But with a so-called dead language, the meaning is fixed. So if you need something that's precise, like liturgy, like law, and like medicine, this language is very useful when you need to be precise and particular about what something should mean, and there's no ambiguity. But anyway, I took us down a rabbit hole there, and I didn't mean to, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's you know, I mean even Vatican II required Latin still to be taught in
of course,
temples.
Yeah. Per Spellman per Cardinal Spellman had to have a translator.
Yeah.
Was it? I think it was Spellman. Yeah.
And of course, but that was, you know, like everything else that was forgotten about and trounced. But yeah, Latin is, you know, and for centuries, Latin was the great, you know, lingua franca of academia, even of commerce at one time, certainly of learning generally, and right up until the middle of the 20th century, de rigueur to have Latin in most school curricula. It's a great shame and a great loss to the world, but particularly to the church, because of course there are now generations of clergy who can't read the patristic fathers in their original languages. And of course that includes, St. Thomas Aquinas, that includes Anselm, that includes Augustine as well. All these great theologians, master theologians of the church, upon which the perennial magisterium is developed from and based upon. Today, people are relying on translations, which is never good.
And now under the current pope, they're not even publishing things in Latin; they're publishing in Italian.
Yeah, Italian first. Yeah, I mean the Latin used to be the official first language of the Vatican. Everything was published in Latin, and everything came out in Latin first before it came out in anything else officially. But of course, as we've noticed with recent official documents, A, they're leaked, and B, they're in Italian and English and Spanish long before they're in Latin. In fact, I don't know, maybe one of our viewers can tell us. I gave up looking, but has the recent motu proprio been officially posted yet on the Vatican website in Latin, or is it still only available in French, Spanish, and English and Italian? Perhaps somebody could just check that for us, because I remember Brother Stanislaus saying at the time in the first program we had following the decree that it would be interesting to see what the Latin says. To see if it marries with the Italian and with the subsequent English translations. So if anyone does know, perhaps they could check the Vatican website for us, vatican.va, just see if the motu proprio Traditionis Custodes has been published in its Latin edition yet. As I understand things, when Reggie Foster left Rome, that's when the Latin translations all started disappearing, because he used to do the great bulwark of that work.
Well, when I was there, Reggie Foster did the ATMs within the Vatican. I think there were two of them.
That's right.
The Latin was an option.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
which I actually used once, just for the sport of it.
Yeah,
but,
I mean there's a chap on YouTube who went to the Vatican, and he's a Latin student and was.
Oh, I saw that. Do you know, I was surprised that the clergy did okay. Actually,
they didn't do too badly. Yeah,
no, it wasn't too bad. I thought it would be a lot worse. Perhaps it was heavily edited, but
well, I think they understood more than they could say. If you get my meaning, because they understood everything he said, but they didn't quite know how to respond.
No, and I mean they broke the cardinal rule of the verb comes at the end of the sentence. Nobody did that. Not one of them.
Reggie would be turning in his grave.
Oh, he would. But he probably give them the magical 7. He was famous for, if anyone here is not serious about Latin, I'll give you a 7 now, which was a pass, and then leave and don't come back. If you're serious, stay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. So now where were we? Well, some people have replied actually to the question we put, and we can now go back to. Bless him. Father Thomas wasn't quite sure of the spelling, but R.A. Pam, bless them, has done that for us. So, yes, so the new Chinese bishop was consecrated in Wuhan. And, of course, he is the 6th bishop since the New Deal that nobody really knows the workings of. Between the Vatican and the communist government and Chinese Catholic Patriotic Association. But there was something strange about this situation, because there was no prior announcement until after the event, when the Chinese Catholic Patriotic Association itself announced that the new bishop had been consecrated, and then a few days later, then the Vatican confirmed the consecration and the appointment. Now, there is a suggestion made by the Vatican spokesman that Pope Francis approved the appointment on June 23rd, and yet there's nothing in the Bollettino from the Vatican on the 23rd of June where all the usual appointments and announcements, etc., are made. There's no mention there at all of this new bishop for China. So the speculation is that the New Deal, whatever it is, isn't quite working out as planned.
Are you surprised?
Are we surprised? No, indeed.
Of course not. I mean, you do a deal with the devil's going to fox you. I mean, come on. A child could predict this.
Yeah.
I saw recently the museum to Tiananmen Square. I think it was just yesterday, actually, in Hong Kong, was raided and dismantled. You know, China. I was watching just a public television broadcast about a travel show to Taiwan. Taiwan's days are numbered too. It's all coming for you. China's on the rise, and it's going to take no prisoners. There's no compromise. And if you think, I mean, it's like Neville Chamberlain and the Concordat with Hitler. I mean, we're watching it rerun. Honestly, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's to think that you can deal with them at any sort of level playing field. No, I mean, the man made himself president for life. Normally, we call that dictatorship. Nobody's calling it that because, we want to placate. He's now teaching the Xi philosophy in every school and university, mandated. If you do not see 1939 and the run up to it replicating itself, you're a fool, an absolute fool.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The fact that they sent McCarrick over to do a deal with the Vatican, I mean, it smacks of Pius XII and the Concordat. I'm beyond commentary on this farce because why do you need me to spell it out? If you have two eyes and a brain in your head, you can see this. Work it out for yourself. Stop listening to the noise. Use your own logic. Put it together. Believe what you're seeing. Use multiple sources to get your news from. And the fact that the church was the first to bite on this stuff makes me so sad. Do you know, when I was home a number of years ago, I think it's now 3-4 years ago, where I used to serve altar at the altar at the Dominican convent, Aquinas Hall it was called. It was the Dominican nuns ran a halls of residence for Catholic girls attending Queen's University in Belfast. In fact, my mother stayed there when she attended the university, and they had a beautiful chapel there, and there was a choir behind the altar which was gated for they were sisters, they weren't nuns, but they still had that choir there when they chanted the office, and mass then was offered, and the residents then it was open to the public, but I used to go and serve mass there as a boy, and the nuns were wonderful, and they sold it eventually as the numbers declined, and there was no need for halls of residence. And it became they sold it. The arts cultural body had bought it over, and the chapel became sort of a conference hall. And but when I was back the last time, there was huge like metal hoarding all around the place, and these massive metal sort of military style gates and a brass plaque which read Chinese consulate to Northern Ireland. Can you believe that a Dominican convent had become the Chinese consulate? I mean, I couldn't take it in. I stood in front of. I was walking home to my parents' place, and I just stood in front of it. I almost wept to think of it. You know, sad indeed. But if we don't see China rising, if you don't recognize this, you're a fool. And I say China. It's not China, but such a wealth of a culture and what they've given to the world. I mean, communist China. It's frightening, and I honestly think, and I've always said actually, you know, Russia will spread her errors throughout the world. Well, Russia, talking about the Fatima apparition, Russia spread its errors to China. China's the one to worry about, not Russia. And I know that the church often prayed for the conversion of Russia. I think almost mission accomplished. But China is the one to worry about. People there are suffering, will suffer, and the fact that the West is silent tells me that the West will be first to fall.
Yeah.
Unless we are strong and stand up to it, and I do not see that happening anytime soon. If it does happen, it will be too late. And the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan tells me we are not able for it. When it happens, not if, when it happens, we're not able for it. So we're in the last days of the Roman Empire. So
I mean,
enjoy your
this is something I was referring to in my homily this morning. In fact, that you know, the I mean, people are blind, it seems to me, to what's coming. People have become so apathetic and so selfish, so self-concerned in the West that they are paying no attention to what's going on around them. This is true in terms of global affairs, but also true in terms of the church. I mean, this week, shocking revelations about the impending synod, you know, Vatican III by any other name, and what has happened to the Anglican Church?
I'm not sure if anyone can hear the fact that the others are cutting out or frozen. If you're still listening, I will speak while they try to come back online.
No, we're good.
Oh, you're back. Yeah. No,
we're good.
You were cutting out there. Everything was garbled for a bit, and people were frozen.
All right. No, we were fine.
Right.
It's your end. Where was I?
Perhaps.
Where was I? So so aside from the global affair, so the recent revelations this week concerning all things synod, and the same thing is going to happen to the Catholic Church as happened to recently to the Methodists, as happened to the Anglicans. There are going to be sweeping changes made upon and decided upon at this impending synod, and people are going to be surprised, they're going to be shocked, they're not going to be ready for it because they are ignoring the signs. They're ignoring the signs. Archbishop McMahon of Liverpool, in an interview this week, talking about the synod in the Diocese of Liverpool, made reference to the fact that there have been some controversial subjects that people have wanted to discuss, like the ordination of women. Now, instead of saying, well, of course, this is a subject that the magisterium has ruled upon, and indeed Pope Francis very recently said that there's no way that the ordination of women can happen. Instead of saying that, or saying perhaps this might be an opportunity for catechesis for the church at large, at the synod, to finally, make everyone understand and allow everybody to understand why the ordination of women is not possible. Instead of saying either of those two things, he said, well, we put it to one side. We put it to one side. In other words, this is a topic that, we'll come back and we might discuss it then. We know that Francis, of course, has, approved this commission that is looking at the possibility of women deacons, despite what he said 2 years ago when he reiterated what Benedict XVI had said, what John Paul II had said, that the ordination of women is just not a question that we can discuss. Even so, he allows this commission on women deacons to carry on. All of that, of course, is going to feed in to this Vatican III synod. And people are just not awake to it. They're not awake to it. They don't realize. And just like the Methodist Church last week, or a month ago or so, approved same-sex weddings. The church in Wales last week approved the blessing of same-sex couples post civil weddings. The Anglican Church and the ordination of women and everything. All these things, they've been in discussion for years. I mean, as somebody was telling me today, they read the Methodist situation since the early 90s, year upon year, every Methodist conference, the question of blessing or of same-sex marriages has come up. It's been kicked a touch or pushed to one side, but eventually this year it went through. Read the ordination of women in the Church of England. It kept coming to synod, even though they kept getting no, they kept bringing it back until they got yes. Same with the consecration of women bishops. And this, we're going to see repeated. Exactly this stuff is going to happen to the Catholic Church. And this is what's incredible. And I think why people don't realize this is because it is so antithetical to the way that the Catholic Church ordinarily works. Ordinarily, tradition, the perennial magisterium, etc., would kick all this stuff into touch long before. This should be, way in the long grass and the other side of the forest. But since Vatican II, anything and everything is up for discussion, so it seems. Mm-hmm. And under this Pope, he is pushing that everything is oh, well, who am I to judge? Who am I to know? Who am I to say? Who am I? And everything is and people don't realize that this is what's happening. This is what's happening in the church. This stuff is going to happen.
Yeah, it's a consequence of ecumenism, right? Once you start dialoguing, then you become the puppy dog of it. You're the newest member. So you want to be more woke than the next one. You're ultimately going to follow. What they're doing is I'm going to do too, right? It's like, I hate to say it, it's like my own country of Ireland. A new country formed in 1921. Anything you can do, we can do. It's like a teenager trying to prove that they're an adult, right? So what France passes will pass a more liberal law because we're with it. Look at us, and it's ultimately the same for the Catholic Church. Normally, they would just no dialogue, nothing, Protestantism, done. I spoke with an archbishop from the Russian Orthodox Church several years ago, and he said, I think were wise words. He said, before the Vatican Council, we could have achieved something, but the Roman Church wouldn't talk to us. Now they're talking to us. We're not interested because it's not Christianity. I mean, those are cutting words, and they're very true. I mean, the liturgy was similar. The thought was similar. Now they're just throwing themselves at everything, and it's just crazy. I mean, the stuff that comes out that's tolerated, anything that's orthodox is squashed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how many times can Rome fall? Because we're about to see the umpteenth. We've had the Goths, the Visigoths. It's However,
I don't know if you. I don't know if
the,
you can
the
see.
faith
Anne
will
in
survive,
Ireland.
folks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anne in Ireland's posted the result for you.
Mayo beaten by 5 points. I'm thinking Anne might be from Mayo, but I'm very delighted that Tyrone won because both my parents were born there.
There we go. Now, Brother Stanislaus, last night's show was touching upon this very thing, and you've coined, I think, a very apt phrase for the situation. You referred to the dark night of the church. Can you just maybe for the benefit of tonight's viewers, just give us short précis as to why you've diagnosed or why you call the crisis the dark night of the church?
Okay, so I would say that in short, because it's obvious that something's wrong with Peter. And so that's where, like a doctor, you diagnose the patient. Okay, if something's wrong with Peter, then something's wrong. And it wouldn't be something temporal, because that's not what we're about. We're about the spiritual. So in this case, you can sort of nosedive right into, okay, so what is Peter showing us from the spiritual perspective? And like you both have been saying, we're not getting what has traditionally been taught. So Peter split. It's obvious Peter split. And so what does that, and so that's where I that's where it started looking like, is this fitting into the spirituality of St. John of the Cross and how he describes crisis, except the dark night, and unfortunately we can't go into what it actually properly means. The dark night means conversion. It means conversion, that I desire conversion, and our Lord is saying, okay, well, here are the things that are going to change you. And like we were saying last night, I can't remember if it was on air or off, but almost all the time, that's going to involve secret pride. And it's called secret pride because you don't see it. And that's why the dark night of the soul, the dark night of the spirit, I'm looking at my board, the dark night of the spirit will reveal those things at the root, as opposed to the dark night of the senses, which also reveals, but they're more superficial. They're things that I can actually see. So for Peter, if he's split, what does that mean? Well, I think we're watching what it means. And so I hope I haven't come off as being disrespectful. I'm just, as we both have been talking and I've been listening, I've been getting some notes. So since I have the opportunity, I'll go through a little bit because it's kind of fun. One is that we were talking about the canceled priests, and I do have a problem with them, and that's why I have a problem with Mel Gibson, because canceled priests are compromised. And they're out there raising all kinds of millions of dollars. And the faithful are falling for it. Again, they're going for these guys who are actually compromised. And thanks be to God, most of them, if not all, the ones, there are good ones. There are good canceled priests. I'm not saying there aren't. There are good ones. But even those good ones have not been properly trained in the traditional theology, in the traditional understanding. It means something. And what we pointed to yesterday was the interview that Francis gave to this Spanish journalist a few days ago, in which he said the way that someone would, the way a priest would seek permission through his bishop, and then the bishop to the Vatican to say the traditional rite would be, he would see it as just like someone asking to be by ritual, to get faculties to say another ritual, another approved rite, if I could say, usually apostolic rite. Okay, so for us, it seems to me what he did was to say, yeah, this is different. That what's being done now is the Roman Catholic Church new and improved, and it's different. He said it's different. That the old rite is a different ritual. and you would have to learn. So for me, that says it all. And what we've talked about for weeks on this Friday show, the Pope of Woke, the woke church. What's interesting to me is that the demonic is so revealing. It's always revealing. The thing is that we're not always looking. So like in woke, the thing about woke is when you're actually woke, if you're woke, like Hollywood and probably everybody that's compromised with Hollywood, if you're woke, you're actually blind. Woke doesn't make you awake, it blinds you.
Yeah.
So
you hit on it there. You hit on the people use the term woke,
Mhm.
and I prefer the term awake. If you're awake, you're dealing with facts. You can see the whole thing. If you're woke, I think you're sleepwalking. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just nonsense. But I'd rather be awake than woke. Just to chime that in. If you want a T-shirt slogan, there you go.
Well, I remember when it first started, and I kept waiting for that correction to come out, because I thought woke. I mean, my English is terrible, but even I know that that wasn't right, you know that. And so, but they didn't. They adopted it as a movement, the woke movement, and that's when I realized, oh my gosh, there is something to it, because people, even Rome has taken it. So even is it going to the Chinese? Okay, I don't think it's the Chinese Catholic Patriotic Association anymore. It's the Catholic Church. Because that's what the agreement is. They're not that anymore. They're the Catholic Church. The underground church, which used to be recognized, is now anathema. They have to join or not, and all these things. And Bishop Kelly was right on. Now I think this is just from my experience, and I'm certainly not. I'm sure that both excellencies would have something to add, but the demonic, while being obvious, I think can also, that's their trick, is it can be too obvious. And for me, China is too obvious. So where do you go? Well, one is like we talked about yesterday. What do? You cling to tradition, because when the popes woke, and the new leader of the world is China, what do? Well, you cling to tradition. That is the answer. However, I think the Third World War, Vatican III, all of it's already happening. It's happening in silence. That's to me, and maybe I'm going to get it for saying this, but I think that's the demonic. That's what they've learned from 1939, because they've learned, the demonic learns as well, and they're doing it again. Okay, but now they've learned all these lessons, and I think that now is the time. It's their time. And
yeah, it really is their time. And I would remind people, and which I often do. I mean, locally, but everything is instantaneous now. The Pope tweets, we all get it. The Pope shows up at Wednesday audience, it's broadcast. Early Christians, while looking to Rome, did not hang on every word that came out of the Pope's mouth. If something significant did, it could take up to 2-3 years for it to get to the farthest parts of Christendom. The lesson of that is not to cling on, to obsess about what's coming out of the mouth of Rome. Like the early Christians, if it's significant, it'll arrive eventually. But what they did is they hung on to what they knew. They practiced their mass, their religion, their piety. They held on to the faith, and they were as happy as Larry. They didn't have to worry what this, and somebody says this, and Cardinal this says that, and that. It's often all of this Rome talk becomes captivating. The freedom is just practice the traditional religion, like our ancestors did, because they didn't have the podcast, they didn't have the Twitter, they didn't have the instantaneous motu proprios that were emailed everywhere, available online. It took years to come.
Yeah.
They practiced their religion, They went to their mass, they said their prayers, they raised their families, they listened to what Father had to say on Sunday. They observed the seasons, they celebrated, they fasted, they lived Christian lives. And there's a tremendous freedom in doing that. And that's ultimately what we have to do. The only way to survive this craziness, the only way is to emulate that. That is the domestic church. That is Christian living. Unfortunately, we're using it now, right? We're broadcasting on YouTube and Facebook and whatever else. But the freedom is just to live your Christian life. The church will set you, get yourself involved with the traditional parish. It'll give you the tools to live your life, and just go live them. Because we get frustrated, we get angry. Of course, you got to keep your finger on the pulse. But that's for some people, right? That's for us as bishops to do, and to worry about and to listen to this craziness. But for ordinary folk, I'm not saying if you're interested in it, of course, indulge, but don't let it control you. Don't let it ruin your day, because if it ruins your day, it has control over you. Christ should illumine your day, and set you free from this stuff.
Well, I would say if it ruins your day, then work on your faith.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Faith.
Christ should illumine your day, and this stuff ruin your day, then you got to reassess your relationship with Christ.
You can't see my hand. Since I have both of you here, which is rare for me to have both of you in front of me, the objection, because everything, we've all done it. Okay, we've all made our choice in a sense. Okay, but the objection is going to be, you, by doing what you say to do, excommunicates me because I have to separate from Rome. How do you answer that? Because that is what that's and I do that's what they tell people, and that's what they hear, and they say, I'm not separating. I mean, and mostly that just is that mostly traditionally minded people, they're the first ones that will say that. I don't want to be separated from Rome. I
don't see the dichotomy. I don't think I'm separated from Rome. I'm a Catholic. No, I recognize that Peter's throne is in Rome. I recognize the authority of the Pope, but I don't hang on every word that comes out of his mouth, especially the craziness. And I know that my faith dictates what I have to listen to, not what comes out of his mouth.
And I think going back to
the very fact that he said, for the Pope of Rome to say that on the celebration of the anniversary of Martin Luther, that we are in the same mind as Martin Luther was in justification. I mean, that's heresy. Do you think I believe that? No, I believe what every Pope believed until this one showed up. I recognize he holds the same. Look, there are many crazy bishops around the world. Perhaps I'm one of them. I probably am. I say some stupid things from time to time. We're not all. He wasn't speaking infallibly either. Thank God. But it doesn't make it makes. I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic to my boots. I will die a Catholic and live proudly as a Catholic. And I do not reject the Pope of Rome. I do not reject the authority of Rome either. But when he's, as we say in the States, cray-cray, I'm not going to listen to that. Look, we have a president who obviously suffers from dementia. Do you think I'm going to listen to that either? No, I have my own mind. God, one of the best things that Pope John Paul II did, and he didn't do many, was Fides et Ratio. Faith and reason. That's a wonderful document. It's basically a philosophical document. He's a philosopher rather than a theologian. But the use of it's all Thomas Aquinas. It's the use of faith and reason. We are endowed with what separates us from the other two souls, being the animal and the vegetative, is reason. and we have to use it. We have to deduct for ourselves what is true, and that's our path to the truth. No, we are bound to listen to Peter when he speaks ex cathedra, or at least to engage with that seriously. But these musings at a Wednesday audience, no, I don't have to take that. I mean, if he orders the crab instead of the venison, it's the same thing. I don't care. That's his choice. If he, honestly, it doesn't make me any less Catholic. That's the point.
No. And
your
course,
Catholicism,
and of course,
your Catholicism
read the church in China. Read the church in China. They are in exactly the same situation as we were 150 years ago.
Yes,
they've exactly the same situation where Pius IX suddenly said, "Right, I'm not going to acknowledge the primitive Catholic Church in Holland anymore. I'm going to acknowledge this new hierarchy that I've established." Pope Francis has done exactly the same thing. He says, "I'm not going to recognize the primitive Catholic Church that went underground because of the communists. Instead, I'm going to recognize and make legitimate the Patriotic Association." Exactly the same thing. Do we say that the underground Catholics in China are now excommunicated? No. Do we now say that they are no longer Catholics? No. Can we say that? No. Just like us as Old Romans. We are Catholics. We've always been Catholics. There's been no question about our beliefs. We are always what we were. This is, for those, because I know some people perhaps don't quite understand who Old Romans are, but in a nutshell, that's exactly the situation. The Chinese situation and the Dutch situation 150 years ago, exactly the same situation. Now, does that make us less faithful? No, because we have determined, just as the underground Catholic Church is determined, just as Cardinal Zen, God love him, is determined to remain faithful Catholics, no matter what Rome says.
Now, do you think?
Let me reevaluate. Fides et Ratio is the second best thing that JP2 did. He was a staunch supporter of the underground Catholic Church because he knew of the evils firsthand of communism.
Yes, yeah.
He was a staunch supporter of them, and God bless them. They've been fed to the wolves by Peter. It's disgusting. If anything, I mean, everyone talks about Francis and the motu proprio. The worst thing he ever did, and there may be more to come, was the Chinese question. And I can never, ever, I will find it in my heart, through God's grace, but I find him very hard to forgive him that. Because that cost real lives. It destroyed faith. It was abandonment by the shepherd. He will answer for that. God love him, and God spare him the mercy of Christ. But he will answer for that before the throne of judgment. I would tremble think about that. He really did a bad job on those people of China.
So,
I mean,
so what do you think Rome, the world, will say if that underground church, which remains, if and when they ordain their own bishops?
Well, I hope they keep doing. But the church will deny it, and they'll excommunicate, and they'll huff and they'll puff. Right. But who cares?
But
they're doing the right thing.
I mean,
they're doing the right thing.
That's right. Yeah. I could see
the shepherd fed them to the wolves. What are they going to do? Either they starve or survive. They're going to provide for their own. It's just heartbreaking.
And of course, the irony, read the Chinese situation, is that prior in canon law, consecrating a bishop without pontifical mandate was not an excommunicable offence.
That's right. Yeah.
Prior to the 20th century, it was a bad thing, but it didn't automatically incur an excommunication. Yeah. The ironic thing is that Pius XII changed that because of the Chinese situation, because of the communist bishops and to make sure that the communist bishops were not mistaken for being real bishops or being orthodox bishops, he changed the law. He changed the canon law to say that if you consecrate without a pontifical mandate, that is now an excommunicable offence reserved to the Holy See. So, you know, interesting times now, because apparently now those bishops who previously were excommunicated are now legitimate. I mean, but no. I mean, I'm not aware of any decree that has said that. You know, is anybody aware of a decree from Rome saying that the communist bishops were now not excommunicated? Don't know, but
well,
so we have this ironic situation now where you could have Catholic bishops from the underground now supposedly excommunicated, now supposedly excommunicable. It's crazy.
Yes, and that's my point to so many who are now, you know, watching that. That's what really you guys are. Underground bishops, you know, holding the tradition, and there'll be others after you. And that's what we have given, you know, in a way given up, is what the world sees as faithfulness to Rome. We are being faithful to Rome.
But we are being faithful. We are being faithful, as Marcel Lefebvre famously said, to eternal Rome. To eternal Rome. That's
absolutely.
That is
no one will ever turn me from that. I am a Catholic. I am a Roman to my last breath, and it is eternal Rome. These people will come and go. It's a shame they're leading souls astray. You know, I wish and I hope for the glory days, but we don't live in those. We live in now, and we have to maintain the faith. And there are good priests, there are good bishops, both within and without the so-called parameters. But just like Rome does, these parameters are blurred. You know, they just don't like us, so you know they want to harden that border. But you know, open the other borders. That's why they court the Methodists and the Anglicans and everything else, because they certainly will become them. The very fact that Martin Luther's statue was at the Vatican, a Vatican stamp, was justification is the same. It's going to merge into something, but as Benedict said, there will be a remnant, and not to think of yourself as something. But yeah, but it's not to think of yourself as something special or something. We're holding on to the faith. The faith was given by our Lord Jesus Christ. It was handed on to us by the apostles. And down through the centuries it came. Men and women fought and died for it. They held the belief. Hold the belief. And not to hold it for like, you know, oh, I must hold this down. Don't be bitter about it. Enjoy it. Live your life as a Catholic. It's the most enjoyable experience. I mean, the amount of feasting we do way outwells the fasting. It's an enjoyable thing because we have the joy of the freedom of Jesus Christ, which is the freedom of death and eternal life. Live it, enjoy it, bring your children up, watch them smile, embrace them in it, coax them in it. It's the only defense against this world. Just love it. It is absolutely a wonderful faith, a wonderful way of life. And you have to think, it's not just I'm a good Catholic, I go to Mass on Sundays. It's a way of life, just like for Orthodox Jews or the Amish or anyone else who takes their faith seriously, devout Muslims. Take your faith seriously. Don't be Joe Biden. Don't be saying I'm a very devout Catholic and then just, you know, spout something else. Live your faith. Every time you pass a chapel or a church, cross yourself. Every time an ambulance whips by, cross yourself and say a prayer for the afflicted. You know, wear appropriate dress. If you can, wear a cross in your lapel or around your neck. Say your rosary if you're on a train or public transport to pass the time. Take the beads out. Just live your faith. Say no to meat on Fridays if somebody offers. but enjoy it. You know, when we come to great feasts, just pull all the stops out. Invite your neighbors over. This is how we do Christmas. This is how we do, whatever feast it happens to be. You know, invite them over. Let the wine flow. You know, have the cakes and the food and impress them. You know, that's joyously living your faith. It's not doom and gloom. And often, you know, traditional Catholics, because we're up against it, the perception is, you know, that, oh, we're so persecuted. I don't feel persecuted. These people are idiots. I mean, I'd love to free them from
I don't mind being persecuted.
I
don't mind being persecuted. I'm more than happy to be crucified for the faith.
But I don't. Do you feel? I don't feel persecuted. I dismiss these people as.
I just dismiss. Yeah, I mean, it's like water off a duck's back.
Yeah, it's silliness. It really is silliness. I mean, and it's because
we have the faith, because we have the sacraments, because we cling fast to tradition, we're able to do that. And I mean, it really is.
It is freeing. You know, I used to, and I see so many. Well, not so many, but I see a lot of traditional Catholics who are bitter, and I understand why, because I've been there. But if you, as you said, Archbishop, if you truly live your faith, who cares? Convince them, like our Lord said, convince them by your love. Be happy, like give them a reason to want to inquire what's up with you. You know, just don't be bitter about it. You know, look, these people will come and go. They're always going to say bitter things. That's the situation we're in. Whether you spend your life fighting against it or water off a duck's back. And I think you achieve more if it's water off a duck's back and they see that you're content, because nothing would give them more glee to see that they're annoying you. You could take it for granted we annoy them just by living a Catholic life. You know? I mean, Cardinal Suppage, you can't even say a Hail Mary publicly after Mass. I mean, come on, listen to this stuff. Yeah, if that doesn't tell you anything, the priest cannot lead a Hail Mary publicly after the celebration of Mass, coming from the Archbishop of a diocese.
Now, of course,
really?
remember that a retraction has since been made about that.
Whether it has. I didn't read that. Can I say it again? You could say it privately, apparently.
Well, no. Well, I don't know about that, but the point was that the priest who said that the cardinal had forbidden has now retracted that, and said that the cardinal hadn't said. Now, I think the cardinal had said, but they're just backtracking.
Of course he did.
Using him as a scapegoat. But yeah, I mean, all we can do. I mean, and the whole point of this program, and most of the programs, well, no, not most of the program. The whole point of this program, particularly, and Friday night and Monday night, is to help people to see and understand the issues and the errors and the contradictions. But the majority of our programming is actually to facilitate a traditional Catholic piety, which is why we broadcast the Angelus 3 times a day, why we broadcast the traditional Mass, why we broadcast the Rosary, etc. Because it is, extremely difficult for traditional Catholics to, for some traditional Catholics, I would say for the majority of traditional Catholics, to come together to worship, because people are spread out literally across the world. So the idea of this channel was primarily to provide a means by which traditional Catholics could come together to pray, and to pray in real time. Now, I must give an apology for the past week and for the week coming, because I'm afraid, being on travels, we are relying on replaying old broadcasts of the Rosary and the Angelus and things like that, just while I'm away. But when I come back, as per the previous 18 months, then all that will return to live Rosary, etc. Because the point is of using this medium really, and expressly to use this medium in a live way, so that we can make that connection with each other in real time. And what's great about this show and everyone who's watching this show is that I'm here in the UK, you there are in America, people are all over the world watching live and watching us in real time. And I do genuinely think that one can gain a sense of connection in this way. I think that's one of the advantages of this modern technology. Traditional doesn't mean that we can't accept new things. And as always, tradition helps us to appreciate and evaluate new things. Some new things we must reject. Some new things can be useful tools, and this is one. But of course, it always depends, how it's used. Now, if it's used to foster piety, if it's used to encourage piety, if it's used to facilitate piety, well, that's all surely to the good. If even read the broadcast of Mass, okay, of course, it's not the same thing as being physically present at Mass. A spiritual communion is not the same as receiving the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ literally in the Holy Eucharist. But at least if you are unable to get to a true Mass, you can at least spiritually connect yourself with a live offering of the true Mass and make an act of spiritual communion. Because the reality is that for a lot of traditional Catholics, they are, they are in places where there isn't a traditional Catholic presence in terms of chapels or Mass centers, etc. So, we need to utilize technology like this to foster fellowship and to make connections. I think this is working.
Yeah, and I think there's a good balance on this channel between devotional and prayerful and bolstering Christian life offerings. And this shows a bit of an outlier because we deal with current affairs, hot topics. It's unscripted. None of us prepared this. We're just
no idea what we're going to talk about.
No, not at all. And I hope we do it in a critical way, and I mean that in the true sense of the word. That we look at it and critique it from various angles with our mind, not with our prejudices. I hope. I mean, of course, we're coming from a traditional slant. And I also hope we do it in a humorous way that lightens the craziness of or counterbalances the craziness of this world. And I hope people find that useful. And I hope that the humor that we inject into it helps people not be burdened or take things too seriously, and know that remember the words of our Lord, that my yoke is easy, my burden is light. To not to be overburdened. If we have faith in Christ, what's to worry? Whatever comes, be it fire or sword, nothing really matters if we have faith in our Lord. But I think it's a good balance. I think this show is the outlier to much of what we put out, which is faith-based and devotional-based, and of course the broadcast of Holy Mass, which is wonderful. And But if people enjoy this, I hope you do and like it and signify that you do, and that we're not just spewing out hot air. But I hope people have a bit of fun with this show. It's meant to be serious, but the best thing you can do with your enemy is to laugh in his face. So I hope you get that too.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? It's true, though. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Brother, is there anything else you want to add?
I don't know. I just going off a lot of what I agree with what you everything said, and it's come up a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. But I think Judaism is adolescent, and Islam is obdurate. I don't think I could ever say that there's something. That's just it. Is that even though Pope Francis, what he said, the Jews are very angry with him for saying there's no life in Judaism. He's, is there? We don't direct people to Judaism or Islam.
Well, surely the central claim of the faith is that Jesus was the Messiah, and Jesus himself said, "I have come to fulfill," and he did. After that, what's to discuss?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we might, or I could, or whoever says something like that could come off as a little nutty. But, I'm thankful for some of these faithful Jewish communities in this country because they're safe places to go, in the sense that you can feel safe there. They're not crazy. They're not bad neighborhoods, and they're disappearing like the rest of them. But they too need to see. And then I guess I'm just looking down at my notes. Earlier, we're talking about the attention.
Notes? This is unscripted. Yeah. No notes.
Oh, these are new notes. Believe me, just from what I've heard today. But one of the reasons I'm so hard on everybody, on the world, on Catholics, on traditional Catholics, is because we have everything. You can get whatever you want, and they are. Text, email, phone, computer. They can get whatever they want. The biggest problem that I see is they're rejecting it. And see, in the past, when we didn't have this, you could make that excuse for them. That, well, you it's not there. Oh, it's there. And they are reading it because they're rejecting it. They're saying, no, my God would not treat anybody that way. My Jesus would never say that to somebody, And that's
no, obviously, the people who say that have never, ever cracked a Bible.
Yeah,
Honestly, the stuff that Jesus said, they'd be shocked. You really have to smell insults to bring them around.
Jesus, more than anybody else in Scripture, even St. Paul, talks about hell.
Yeah.
Fact.
They think this thing really annoys me that they've made Jesus into sort of a Gandhi figure. This flower power hippie thing no, he was a wake-up call to humanity. If you don't, this is the consequence. Better a millstone be tied around your neck and thrown. Come on, listen to him. You have to. If you don't, that's the folly. If you do, liberty. Yeah. That's the liberty. There's no liberty in flower power Gandhi Jesus. There's nothing. You're toast.
Even though
he tells you you're toast.
Even though that's what the world says, is that's where your freedom is. And then going back to the Passion, the movie The Passion, is that's what he so brilliantly captured, I believe, in the scene of our Lord before Pontius Pilate and their exchange. In that, in many ways, Pontius Pilate was saying, "Give me something to help you. In other words, give up something. Give me one little crack." And of course, I can't, because I am truth itself. Okay, we have to do the same thing. Yeah. You cannot compromise, not when you know what the truth is. And I don't care if it's Peter or Francis, you can't, and you both have said this already, you can't compromise. You can't. And that's where we are.
Why? Why would you? Why would you give it all up for just a compromise? I mean, that's Delilah and Samson. That's I mean, it's why throw it all away? What profit a man if you give up, and gain the world? It's just hold fast, because the true liberty is within the faith.
Except that the narrative in the world is that we are the ones on the wrong side.
Yes, of course. We're the stuck in the muds. We're the stodgy ones. We're the dour-faced ones. We won't let anyone do what they want. Honestly, try it. Try it for a week. Try it for a month. It'll liberate.
Just going back to what we were saying in the beginning, look at the fruits.
I read an article this week. All the mainstream churches, including the Catholic churches, because why not throw them in with the mainstream Protestants, because they basically are what do you call it? Losing parishioners at 20% a year decline. The only faith group, Christian faith group, and for the theologians that might want to email me, I'm putting quotation marks around this, that are gaining in the United States are the Amish. And it's not because of the lifestyle, although that has something to do with it. It's because of what they call the code. There is a set form of beliefs that you must live your life to, parameters. Now, we as Catholics used to have that. Some of us still do. And it's within that, what the world tells you is restrictions, this code that you need to lead your life with. It's tremendous. It's there to make you free. It's not there to restrict you. And that's why they're gaining. And they think I think they projected it to 80 years' time, they will be the predominant. If things keep going, they will be the predominant Christian domination in the United States in 80 years.
Except I was wondering about.
But all the other mainstream ones are like no code, anything goes. Episcopalian, you want to marry your dog, mother will have a service tomorrow, and the Methodist, whatever it happens to be, it's all laissez-faire, whatever makes you feel good. They actually have a code. Now, perhaps they didn't mention the Orthodox, so perhaps they may have a chance.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Did they mention the non-denominational?
They did. No, they did. Actually, they did, and they are also bleeding numbers.
Because you wouldn't know it. Go check out any non-denominational megachurch on Sundays.
But they're still bleeding numbers according to this.
Yeah, I don't see that. But the reason why I ask, because non-denominational, I think that's why they're so popular, because they're nothing. But you can say you went.
Coming from Northern Ireland, I never understood this thing non-denominational.
It's American for sure. Yeah, it's totally American.
If you're not Catholic, you're Protestant. There's just two things. Even if you're Jewish, you're Catholic Jew, you're Protestant Jew. There's just two.
And of course, one of the things that I appreciate about the Amish and the Bruderhof and similar communities is the lifestyle, is the fact that they are intentional. They live their lives intentionally imbued with their faith. And of course, the code comes from their faith, but it's the shame is that the vast majority of Catholic Christians do not themselves live or realize actually that we ought to be living our lives in a similar kind of way.
We should.
It's not about being secular the rest of the week and holy for an hour on Sunday.
Apart from priests and religious, we as Christians have never adopted a mode of dress, unlike the Muslims or the Jews or other religions. But it doesn't mean, perhaps that would help remind you. I mean, often when I put on my cassock, I'm reminded of my purpose, and it does remind me of who I am and my purpose in life. But we as Christians have to live an intentional life. And the first word upon your lips when you wake in the morning should be the word of Jesus. You should have his name upon your lips, and the last word also. And when to say your morning prayers, to make the sign of the cross with holy water, to get up, to get your children ready, and when they leave the house for school, to make sure they make the sign of the cross, to gather at evening and give thanks and say grace for the food that you have, to celebrate the feasts, to attend Holy Mass on Sunday and holy days of obligation, to go through the rituals, to fast on a Friday. All of this is an intentional way of life. And we don't have to make a big deal of it. And as I said, we never adopted a mode of dress apart from our clergy and religious. But when somebody
and
offers
a principle
you
of modesty,
a sausage, there's principle. Yeah, of course. Well, of course. I didn't think I needed to say it, but yes, I should. But when somebody offers you a sausage on a Friday, just say no. And if they ask why, don't laud it over that I'm better. Well, I don't have it. No, just think I abstain, and tell them the reason why you abstain, why Friday is a particular day, and why you fast. And I mean, people, you'd be very, very surprised how many people can tap in the way you present it. This whole thing about dieting and coming from me, I know. But people doing this 5-3, 5-2 thing, fasting, all that sort of stuff. I would say, well, as a traditional Catholic, I fast on a Friday. I think at least once a week you can fast, and they hone in on it. Yeah, I've been trying that. I've been doing the 5-2 diet. I've been fasting 2 days a week. All right, well, we've been doing that forever, Wednesdays and Fridays, but they tap in a different level, and it's your opportunity just to explain your position. I mean, are you going to convert them? Possibly, maybe, perhaps not, more likely not. But you planted a seed in their head, and they don't think it's just crazy religious nutcase. They've bonded with you in some other level, and they've taken something away. Right? They do it because they want to have the magazine body, but we're doing it because of our faith, and because Jesus died for our sins. And Friday is a hallowed day, and the fact that he gave up the ghost in order to be resurrected, that we may also enjoy that. And so you've communicated, you've evangelized in some level, and they will not forget that. So just honestly, if I can, I've said it before, enjoy your Christian life, intentionally lead it. Honestly, just who gives a damn? I have friends they call them Scottish friends. I know you've been to Scotland. They call themselves serial kilters. They wear a kilt every day. It's odd, but they don't care. They just do it, and they get remarks. But it's become a way of life, and they don't apologize for it. And if somebody's genuinely interested, it's because they're celebrating their Scottish heritage, and that's what they want to do. It is odd in Western society, but lots of things are odd in Western society. Although Western society wants to tell you that nothing's odd and anything goes, but there are a few exceptions. And I should start a new channel called Catholicism and Kilts, because they're the two things that Western society perhaps find us odd. I don't know, but the point being, intentionally live the way. You will get criticism, you will get questions, which is better because you can answer, but enjoy it. Enjoy the freedom of it, to be able to live your life the way that Christ wants you to live. I mean, that is ultimate freedom, no matter what anyone else tells you. And enjoy it, and enjoy your family enjoying it. I'll use a word that you're not supposed to use, indoctrinate them in it. The word doctrine comes from teaching. Teach them about the faith, the freedom of the faith, and teach them to enjoy it. Have them enjoy Easter eggs, Christmas presents, and the build up to it by restricting, and then enjoying. Celebrate their names day, celebrate the day of their baptism as well as their birthdays. There's two more feasts that non-Christians don't have, right? They have birthday, but they don't have their names day, and they don't have their baptismal day, right? So 3 cakes are better than 1. Trust me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we'll bring things, draw things to a close. Now, as I said, I was away this past week in Scotland. Next week, I'm in Slovakia. Just so happens that the Pope is there for the first 3 days as well. We arrive in the country on the same day, on Sunday, tomorrow. But I'm going to ordain. So on the Feast of the Holy Cross, which is on Tuesday, and Ember Saturday next week, I shall be ordaining. So of your charity, please hold me and the ordinandi in your prayers, and for the traditional faithful in Slovakia, at what is the beginnings of a traditional Catholic presence in the country. So please, of your charity, please do pray for me, for the ordinandi, for the faithful, and for the mission there in Slovakia. Hopefully, we will be back next week, even though I'm in Slovakia. Hopefully, we three will gather again next week. Perhaps Father Tom, if he's available as well, and we can chew the cud, as it were, over next week's revelations. And it's incredible, really. I mean, despite the fact that we've been now on air for coming up to over an hour and a half, there is so much we didn't talk about. It's incredible what's going on in the world and in the church at the present time. But we will get round to it all. Don't you worry about that. Don't forget. So there won't be domestic church this coming Monday. Apologies for that. Brother, there'll be a show on Friday?
I plan on being on for certain.
God willing. Brilliant. Okay. So next Friday and Saturday, we hope to see you then. Through the week, as with last week, there will be Rosary, the Angelus, and everything else as usual. There may be live broadcasts of the Mass. Certainly, we're hoping to broadcast the ordination liturgies on Holy Cross Day and next Saturday, Ember Tide. They'll be broadcast live from the chapel of the Archbishop's Palace, or the historic Archbishop's Palace in Bratislava. So it's a beautiful Baroque chapel. God willing, you'll be able to see that on air. Right. Bishop Kelly, would you be so kind as to give us a blessing?
Absolutely. I extend my blessing to all of you who are watching and may watch this in the future. And I extend my blessing, of course, to you, Archbishop, and for safe travels, and to the ordinands in Slovakia. The Lord be with you.
And with thy spirit.
May the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost descend upon you and remain amongst you forever. Amen.
Amen. Well, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from them.
Excellent. And we'll see you all soon. Take care. God bless.
Bye for now. Bye-bye.